the record.
Okay, I just set it so it's recording.
Cool. So if you want to, you can wait.
Yep, I'm going to record.
Cool.
I think it's, hey, Buzz.
It does say recording. Buzz, happy birthday, Buzz.
Thank you, thank you.
Happy birthday, Buzz.
Yeah, man.
Happy
Thank
birthday.
How wonderful. Happy Buzz Day.
Happy Buzz Day, yes. And also, I want, where's, oh, good, there's Donna. I see your hair. There you go. Whoops. Is this sound about the right volume? Because I think Merrill was telling me I was talking too loud. Does it sound good?
Yeah, Merrill has control of his own volume.
All right.
Just to be clear. The source is the source, and we all have control of our own volume.
Yeah, well, it would be nice to have control. Does the fan get in the way back there?
No.
Good.
Didn't hear it.
Good, 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 good. I'm really grateful that everybody, we showed up. We're all together like this online in cyberspace. It's like we're in emptiness. Like we're floating in like pure Shakti emptiness. I think it's great. And I think most of you told me you're able to download the satsang. Well, that's perfect. Because as I said, I'm going to see if I can get through the whole thing because I think it's really good. And I'm going to read it, make a few comments. And at the end, I hope we'll have a little time for comments. We're going to try not to get in too much discussion. I'm going to try to control myself so I can concentrate on the Guru's talk. It's US 86049. The question is from Mataji. So it actually, we know it's coming from a pretty deep place. Mataji says sort of innocently, "Beloved Guruji, could you speak about the nature of awareness?" And one of the things I've noticed about Gururaj is, first of all, he's a very good speaker. And he'll often sum up the entire satsang in the first paragraph, but in a real sort of deep cosmic way. And that's what he's done. So if I were to hear somebody say, what's the nature of awareness? We'd expect something like people, oh, it's bliss consciousness. Oh, it's a feeling of exaltation. Oh, it's a feeling of deep peace and oneness, you know, something like that. So what does he say? Gururaj says, does awareness have any nature? When you use the words nature of awareness, you are applying qualifications to awareness. When we talk of the nature of anything, naturally we would add qualities to that very thing we talk about. But awareness is attributeless. It has no qualities whatsoever. It just is. It's where you just know. To say awareness is attributeless is a little bit, it's referring to a little bit of yoga talk, a little bit of spiritual talk. They talk about Brahman, is the nature of consciousness without attributes. In other words, it has no sense of bliss. There is no sense of ego. There's no sense of senses. It's pure consciousness. However, because we have really conditioned heads, when people say consciousness, you think of a thing. And as soon as you think of a thing, you think of qualifications, like consciousness is big, right? It's everything, right? Those are actually giving it little colorations. Those are giving it attributes. Awareness is what consciousness does, and Gururaj is saying right at the get-go, he says, you know what? Awareness itself, it's not even itself. It's just, it has no qualities. It's just is. It's where you just know. I'm going to tell you, I've been doing this a long time. That's everything. The quality of knowingness. Attribute just the function of knowingness. The awareness itself is Satchitananda. That's Brahman. So Gururaj just gave a nice little summary of, I'm giving away tales here. He's just defined God. However, this existence does have attributes. We experience color, light, form. We like things, we dislike things. So there's some disconnect there. the awareness which we're aware of having doesn't seem to have no qualities whatsoever. We experience awareness with qualities, like I'm feeling lousy or I'm feeling great. Those are qualities. So he says, now what are the mechanics that develop awareness? And then he defines awareness again. Awareness is to be able to look out of this camera and be totally aware of everything around you. This awareness could be developed to such an extent that by just looking at a person, you could know the entire emotional self, the mental self, and the spiritual self of the person. Now, you're saying a couple of things there. One is the quality of awareness, which he's describing, which I think is something that we could all grasp because we saw him doing it a lot. And also, frankly, we do it a lot. We walk into a room, we see somebody, we say, "You all right?" Sometimes we immediately know that there's something off with that person. And if you were to ask you, well, and how did you know that? We'd scratch our heads and say, well, just something wasn't right. I don't know what it was, but something wasn't quite right. We just sort of knew. So Gururaj is talking about you can develop that to such an extent that you can know everything about other people just by looking at them. He's also saying awareness, just the function of awareness is to be able to look at this camera. He's talking about looking at the camera that's watching him while he's doing a satsang. Just look at that camera and be totally aware of everything around you. Gururaj would often kid us and say, how many times, have I said, how many times have I blown my nose? He did this years ago. Everybody's clicking out. He said, how many times have I blown my nose? And somebody would say 5. And he says, no, I've blown my nose 8 times. He would say sort of things to test how conscious we are, how aware we are of the environment. He goes back here. So he's talking about a very sophisticated, very advanced kind of deep awareness. The main question would be how to develop that awareness. The awareness is developed by stages. And this is another key topic that he's talking about. He's talking about an evolutionary process that we're all involved with as meditators. Everything in nature is aware because everything in the world has life. Now that's a provocative statement because we tend to assume that things like rocks don't have awareness, or that rocks don't have life, but somehow we do, even though we're composed out of things like water and minerals and things like that. Somehow we have some elusive quality called life. Gururaj is saying that everything has life, and by extension, he's saying that everything has awareness. So that, to me, immediately was something I was pondering all day today. What does he mean by everything is aware? Some of it's easy. He says, for example, an animal is aware. A dog is aware when its master is coming. Any animal is aware within itself of its own hunger. Could we call that an instinct, or is it awareness? Well, there's no difference between instinct, intuition, and awareness. It's just a matter of degrees in our development in life. Many people function instinctively. At this point, an instinct is something like if you were to take a dog and a dog barks automatically at things. I don't think that's a learned response. I think that's built into its neural machinery. Dogs get hungry at the sight of food. We do too. That's built into our neural machinery, not something learned. It's an instinct. In other words, when you function with just instinct, you're allowing the animal passions within you to flow through you because they're inborn in you. You've inherited them through many past experiences and many, many past lives. And the self of your personality, this is how the self of your personality can express itself. So that's a form of self-awareness of your animal self. He's talking about our instinctual nature at this point. And the need for protection is an instinct in all human beings. The need to have a sense of territory, that belonging, that I have this space of my own, that's an instinct. The kind of instinct for sexuality or procreation is an instinct. The instinct to be in contact with other people is an instinct. These are things which don't have to be taught human beings. They're innate, although sometimes some of these things are controversial. As you progress on the path of evolution, you develop greater awareness when your thinking ability begins. So he's talking about pre-thinking, and we all know animals are very intelligent. Maybe they think, but they don't think conceptually the way we do. An animal may think, oh, there you are again. But the animal isn't going to think, I wonder if you have a PhD in English literature. The dog isn't going to think something like that. That's the kind of thing people think. So he's saying we have greater awareness when our thinking ability begins. That might even say, some people say, what characterize human beings. An elaborate ability to have a symbolic consciousness. They can name things, where most animals, as far as we know, don't name things. The primitive man would not have the thinking ability that you have, for his awareness is limited. His awareness is limited to hunting and fishing and eating and fornicating, perhaps. Then, as man evolves further, he starts asking questions. I would simply say there, since that might upset some people, like, gee, are you slamming primitive people? No, he just means people that haven't gone, they haven't seen TV. They don't discuss presidential politics. They don't have these elaborate conceptual models that people who've come to age in a big, complicated world like ours have. Primitive people are a little bit, they've done studies of them. They have wonderful social lives. They have wonderful mythologies and all that. But he's talking about sort of an elaborate conceptual ability that frankly gets us in trouble a little bit. His awareness, then as man evolves further, he starts asking questions, the whys and wherefores of things. That too is awareness. As soon as the mind starts thinking and asking the why and wherefore of things, you start inquiring into the meaning, not only of the things outside of yourself, but of your own personal self. You want to satisfy that subjective self of yours by trying to find the answers in the objective realm or in the environment that surrounds him. That's also awareness. He's referring there to that stage of, well, the fancy term might be socialization. We're in our family, we go off to school, we suddenly start saying, well, gee, I guess I have to like baseball, or am I going to get a part in that play? That's how you're finding, you say, I'm in the 6th grade. Those are ways you define yourself by the environment around you, the social environment and the physical environment. You say, gee, I'm a human being. That's something that only occurs to you at a certain age in your life. I'm a human being and I'm not a dog anymore. When little tiny children are talking, sometimes they identify with animals so clearly they don't clearly say, like, well, that's a dog and I'm a human. They're different. They sometimes sort of see themselves as the same, very, very young children. So he's saying when the thinking ability starts up, we start inquiring by looking out in the world and using the world to define us. I'm a middle-aged man. I live in California. Those are ways that you define yourself by using the outside world, okay? But he's saying that's a further stage of awareness coming out of thinking. Then he goes on. As you progress further, you become dissatisfied with the answers you find around him. I'm changing he to you. You become dissatisfied. This is a beautiful sentence. The stones or the trees cannot explain to him anything. This is mysterious, but he has an example where he says, for example, when we were at someone's home, I was shown a stone that had been picked up at the seaside. I meditated for a few moments on the stone and I explained the whole story of that stone, how big that stone was, how many years it took to become that size. Because it was lying in the water all the time, and with the workings of the water, that stone became smaller and formed this round shape. That stone has an inner awareness to be able to respond to what was happening to it. If it did not have that awareness, then it could not have changed its shape, although the outer circumstances helped it to do so. But that ability to do that was inherent in the stone because of its own molecular structure. That structure is contained within all of us in a more advanced way. That also is awareness. Now, I've tried to figure this out quite a bit. Some of you, it may be very clear. It wasn't clear to me. On one hand, I understand perfectly how you can look at nature and somehow you get some sense of what reality is like by studying the way clouds work or the way trees are. I can understand nature in that way. But he goes on to say that nature itself has a kind of awareness that you tune into. He said it had something to do with its molecular nature. I'm going to put it to you like this. Stones are stones because of their stoniness. The molecular structure of a stone is what dictates the way stones are. In a way, that's saying that the molecular structure of a stone or the molecular structure of our body is a kind of intelligence. It's a kind of way the stone is a stone. The way our structure allows us to be us. Even our thoughts are just electrical energy. Somehow they express human beingness. That's a kind of intelligence. That's a kind of awareness. It's just a very sophisticated notion of awareness. And I think it's important here to really get where Gururaj is coming from, because he's saying basically everything is aware. Everything is alive. And this is basically comes from, I heard Deepak Chopra, I was looking him up and everything. This is God consciousness. This is what you feel when you reach Gururaj's level of awareness. Everything is alive for him. So he goes on. When we begin all these inquiries of outside nature, we start inquiring about our inside selves, our inner selves. And we start thinking of our mind. Why are we thinking this way? Why is my mind feeling this way? Why is love in my heart? Or why do I have hatred? We start asking all these questions one by one by one. Joe told me about his kids being, 12 or 13 or something he's teaching. That's, I remember being the very first time where you start really looking in. It's like, why am I feeling this way? Why do I have these crazy thoughts? That's in adolescence. And for we spiritual types, we spend our whole lives wondering about that. We start defining ourselves, by the way, by who we think we are, who we feel we are. We don't, hopefully at this point, you don't define yourself by, I am, the person who works at the 7-Eleven. I am a school teacher. Hopefully you're defining yourself by what I feel and think and am. We start asking all these questions one by one, and that means an increase in awareness. This is the beginnings of self-inquiry. It's essential for the beginnings of spirituality to turn within and begin to ask ourselves these questions. But after asking all these questions to ourselves, we find that there is no answer. If you hate somebody, do you find the answer for hating somebody? No, you can't. You can't find the answer why you hate somebody. You can only find excuses, but not the real answer. Oh, you say, because, this guy said this to me and I hate him, or that guy robbed me, $5 and now I hate his guts. But when I went to the shop, he gave me a rotten hamburger and I won't go to that shopping again. All I'm doing, what that's doing, he says, what Gururaj says, is analyzing. That's not being aware. I'm going to add this to it. Forgive me, Gururaj. You're reacting based on your patterns or sometimes your instincts. Like you just get angry at something and you don't even know why, you just because you're frightened. But otherwise, we react to things. You judge things. If I had true awareness, says Gururaj, I would say about that rotten hamburger that was given to me, okay, I took a bit of it, I found it not very good, but the shopkeeper had to make a living and he could not throw it in the dirt box because it cost him money to make it, the labor and the materials and all that. And you'd stop hating him. You'd say it was one of those things, okay, and you would accept it. That's a higher form of awareness. By the way, that's what Christ talked about forgiveness. You understand your neighbor as yourself. You're able to see into the hearts of others. And that is a very much higher state of awareness. It's compassion. From these lower levels, says Gururaj, we progress to a form of awareness where everything just becomes one. The Buddhists say this is called same taste. That dry piece of bread, says Gururaj, would be the same as roast turkey or whatever. That's still a higher form of awareness. Then you start to find true awareness, and that lies in love. The supreme question that anybody can ask is, why can I not love? And that this is, he's talking about spiritual love, deep, complete, where, you know, I and my neighbor are one. Christ said, you treat your neighbor as yourself. Your neighbor is yourself. You don't distinguish between those, the welfare of others and the welfare of yourselves. Why can't I love? Gururaj says, when you love only one person, now that's very good. It's a very good start in awareness. But one has to be very careful about that, because the love for that one person, which you think is love, that might not be love at all. It might just be need, a crutch. It could be a mental crutch, a sexual crutch, any kind of crutch. For example, you could find a man living with a woman, and he says that he loves her, but he might not love her at all. But she looks after the children, which are born of lust and not of love. She looked after the home, she cooks his meals, she scrubs the floor, she does this, that, and everything. Well, that's not love, that's just need. And tomorrow, God forbid, if she gets in an accident, she gets shriveled and burnt, will he love her just as much? If she becomes incapacitated and can't look after the home and the kids and what have you, will he still love her? No. That's not love. That's a need. And when we develop all these various kinds of needs in life, we're diminishing our awareness instead of increasing it. So he's bringing up a notion, this lower kinds of awarenesses, which are based on needs. He's going to bring up the notion of attachment. You know, they're based on instincts, they're based on reactivity to things, they're based on what I need, you know, ego attachment, but they aren't getting involved with that kind of agape, that higher kind of love, that kind of awareness, oneness that he referred to. But the goal of life, says Gururaj, is to increase awareness more and more and more. I'm going to repeat that. The goal of our life is to increase awareness more and more and more. That's the heart of spirituality, to increase awareness. Later, we're going to come to what total awareness is, Gururaj says. But first, we have to learn to discard need. Now, how does one discard need of anything? It's by non-attachment. When you're first non-attached to anything, then you don't have the need for anything. You can accept things as they are. And if I love you, I should be able to love you not just for the sake of yourself, but for the sake of me. It's because I'm just expressing myself. It's all one. It's just me. You're the same as me. It's not because you're beautiful or pretty and you're pleasing and you're good in everything, including bed. It just means whatever is fine. I'm not fighting things anymore. As we become more and more non-attached to things, our need for things lessens. A lot of us have experienced this, that we can live a lot more simply in life because we don't need to have constant stimulation of buying things or getting things or need people's approval. So some of us still need a lot of that stuff, but it tends to be your need lessens as your spirituality. Spend more time in spirituality. That's my edit. Gururaj again. You might have a Volkswagen motor car, for example, and then you think, oh, I'd like to have a Cadillac. But why do you want a Cadillac? Your need has been turned backwards and has become desire. There are your genuine needs, like the need for food to sustain your body or for water to quench your thirst. Those are real needs. But you have perverted needs that are not necessary. When I talk of non-attachment, it's not non-attachment to the real needs of life, but a non-attachment to our imaginary needs. A lot of us have gone through the phase of thinking to be spiritual, we're supposed to deny ourselves. That's just as egotistical as indulging yourself. The point is not to have needs, to feel at peace with that neediness of stuff. If you examine yourselves, 90 or 95% of the needs you have start in your imagination. For example, I'm going to tell you, how many of you eat when you're not truly hungry? I eat a lot when I'm not truly hungry. That's an example where you have a need for something that develops an imagination, or you need to have the new computer, or you need to have that job. It's actually largely your imagined needs. Gururaj, you imagine being Cleopatra, and you want to become Cleopatra. You imagine being a Sophia Loren, and so you doll yourself up and you have a couple of facelifts and all that, even if you're nearly 60 years old. This leads to vanity, and vanity takes away from your real self. I'm going to throw in one quick thing. Did you know feeling sorry for yourself is a kind of vanity? I hope you aren't. I don't see many of your faces, so I hope you're not frowning at me now, but self-pity is a kind of vanity. Worrying about yourself is a kind of vanity. He's talking about being, this one state, he's talking about of awareness, is where you don't necessarily have all those conflicts that we do for ourselves. Vanity takes away from your real self. So there is a fluctuation in awareness. Meaning, in fact, for all of us, in the course of a day, there's a great deal of variation in the degree to which we're aware. Until we become firmly established in self, which is a very advanced state of spiritual progress, all of us tend to go up and down. And there's moments of stress or something where we become very needy, or we're acting out of instinct and our awareness lessens. There's a fluctuation in awareness. Everything is awareness in itself, because awareness is synonymous with consciousness until we reach pure consciousness. Now, I thought that was a Gururaj misstatement in my ignorance, my lack of awareness, until I realized he's quite right. Pure awareness, which is unity consciousness, there isn't any other at all. So there isn't anything to be aware of. This is my little letter. This is something to really meditate on. Everything is awareness in itself, because awareness is synonymous with consciousness until we reach pure consciousness. There's a phrase in Buddhism where we talk about, may I aspire to liberate all sentient beings until I reach enlightenment. And enlightenment, you no longer aspire to rescue sentient beings, because there are no sentient beings. Everything's the same. You become all those sentient beings. So Gururaj, that's a real deep little remark he just makes. Everything is awareness in itself, because awareness is synonymous with consciousness. Consciousness goes up and it says there's degrees of levels of consciousness. As your consciousness becomes more aware, as it develops, eventually you reach pure consciousness, which he's going to talk about at the end. We live in a dream world, Gururaj says. And when all things that are imaginary, creating imaginary needs, these are illusions. And all illusions are fleeting. They never ever last. Think about all the stuff you wanted 10 years ago. Maybe they're the same, but chances are your needs and your wants, these fantasies we all have, they change. They change for me constantly. What we want is something that lasts forever and never changes. I'll repeat that. What we want is something that lasts forever and never changes. How about perpetual happiness or perpetual peace? That comes about by diminishing the needs, the desires, and becoming non-attached. When we talk about the nature of awareness, we're talking about the path of nature that leads us to pure awareness. The path that we are following is according to our own personal psychological makeup. Do you remember Gururaj has emphasized each one of us are a unique expression of our samskaras. We're pure awareness, which has no attributes, which is take on the colorations of this phenomenal existence, of this material world, of this world of desires and needs in our personality. We've adopted all that. Our psychological makeup is the patternings that are brought together in our subconscious mind. That's our so-called personalities, are just bundles of samskaras. We express the impressions of the subconscious minds through our conscious mind, and we bring them into practical reality. So we're saying, like, I think I need I have a fantasy, I need a new car. Then you'll bring that comes from your subconscious needs. You may or you may not need a new car, but a lot of it is just fantasy. You figure out the way to bring it into conscious, practical reality. When we can't bring these desires into practical reality, you suffer misery and your life becomes a torment. Life becomes hell. That's why people suffer. All these sufferings stem from the mind. You say, really? You think, what about if I'm starving to death? Would that be suffering stemming from the mind? Gururaj would say, yes. Your experience, I'm starving. That's a thought that exists in your mind. After all, what is the mind? It's nothing else but the whole togetherness of all the impressions that you've had. Those samskaras of which we've spoken about many times. And the only way to eradicate these samskaras is to become non-attached to things. That's our process of meditation. It's called samskara shuddhi. It's becoming fully aware of samskaras without reacting to them, becoming non-attached to the things that we feel upsets, observing them. These are various factors that govern one's awareness and the limitations of that awareness, although everything is aware. You know that when you walk on the ground, the very earth is aware that you're walking on it. And if you walk on the sand on the beach, your footprints will be there. How come those footprints are there? It's only through your body weight? Or is it somehow through the nature of sand itself that it can be impressed? Remember I told you about the way things are structured. That's their awareness. A stone is a stone. It never turns into a flower and vice versa. Their awareness, they have their own nature. Is it through the nature of the sand itself that can be impressed? Your mind is like the sand, being impressed by its surroundings. See, we're really essentially not any different than sand. We get impressed by things that upset us or trigger our subconscious samskaras, and we reinforce those samskaras. That's the nature of the reactive mind, a little like the sand. And when your surroundings do not give you that joy or pleasure, then that impression becomes depression. And that, as a doctor will tell you, is the greatest disease in the world. The major complaint that I find in people is depression. They feel depressed. And why do they feel depressed? Because they have not developed a certain extent of awareness, of true awareness. That's interesting. He's giving us the definition of how can we not feel depressed. They imagine that they're aware. But when they walk down the road, how much do you really see? Very little. Because you're not aware. Your awareness is only limited to finding that dress boutique. He's making a joke, about the stuff that you're attached to. You only get involved with the stuff that triggers your subconscious attachments and samskaras. That's in your life. That's what fills your life up. You don't even see, how beautiful things are. Gururaj says, what about all those beautiful things that you're passing? That's a lack of awareness. Not a total lack, because without some awareness, nothing can exist in this world. But he says there are degrees of awareness, and people on the spiritual path are trying to find total awareness. This can only come about through meditation and spiritual practices, where the brain cells open up more and more and more. There are 12 billion cells in this 2.5-pound brain. Mine weighs a little less. 12 billion cells, and we are only using 1/1,000,000th part of it. As more and more cells open up through spiritual practices, more and more of that universal mind flows through. When you can capture the totality of the universal mind, then you become fully aware of the entire universe. You become so aware that you just know. So the nature is the path to awareness, which leads to total knowingness. I've only got a couple of minutes here. That's a bombshell. The latest research is people in physics are people that are saying this universe is an expression of consciousness. This is something that all the great mystical traditions have insisted on. The matter that we experience around us is of the nature of consciousness. The natural universal mind he's talking about is not limited to the patterns we have in our electrical processes in the brains. They involve all our samskaras, which are inheritance from past lives. And Gururaj is saying you're actually in touch with a kind of universal intelligence. And this is the kind of stuff I'm really trying to work with, figure this out. For example, take me as stupid as I am. You can ask any question and I'll be able to answer it. I can talk for hours on it. Why? Because I allow this universal mind to flow through this little conscious mind. Everyone here has the ability to tap that superconscious level and to drive away all the dirt, the impressions, and the samskaras and the subconscious, so that that conscious mind could capture the power of the superconscious mind. And that constitutes pure awareness, where you're aware simultaneously of everything. You become aware of someone's thoughts, even without thinking. You just know. When you read stories of these great gurus, like Neem Karoli Baba or Christ, there's often stories where they'll tell the chela exactly what they're thinking or feeling, or some of us have that experience with Gururaj. I had one time where I told him a little fib, and he turned around and he looked at me, and he had a little bit of a frown, and he knew that I told a fib. He knew it. You become aware of someone's thoughts without even thinking. You just know. That full awareness of yourself comes about by tapping the superconscious level of yourself. That's not his word for it. That's a term from Vedantic philosophy. And if you're curious, and I am, Google it. I'm just going to give you a heads up, though, that people have very different ways of talking about it. And I like Gururaj's way of talking about what is this superconscious level of yourself and allowing it to filter to the subconscious. That's what the samskaras are, and our conscious mind, which is called the chitta. When the conscious mind will start becoming aware of what is called love. People say love, but they love only very partially. If you were able to love completely, then you would know God. God is not being captured in little parts. You might have only a little glimpse, but you can capture Him in totality, so that you become one with Him or one with God. That is total awareness. When the totality of the universal mind, which is the personal God, filters through you, you become aware of the feelings of the stone, of the trees, of the wind, of the flowers, of the worms, of the fleas. Even the fleas have needs. That's why they bite you. You become totally aware of all of that. And when you have that awareness, you develop a total love for each and everything. Then you regard everyone and everything as none other than yourself. You find unity consciousness, that I and thou disappears. Duality disappears. And you find that unified field, which Einstein talked about, although he knew nothing about it. He just hinted at it. And that is, I actually just was told, I just sensed what the personal God is. When this divinity, which is unmanifest, it's unpatterned, there's no attributes, when it finds its way through an embodied, an avatara, or an enlightened person, not just a self-realized person, but an enlightened person who is free from the samskaric patternings, who experiences life the way that's going on right there. That's the personal God. That's where we say a person, in a sense, has become God, because they no longer have that conditioned consciousness, no longer have that reactivity. When you enter that unity consciousness, then you are fully aware. When a person becomes fully aware, then he or she knows the nature of everything, because they are everything. You see how the cycle turns? You start off through the various steps, which are part of nature and awareness, and go through various degrees. And we start on that path through the process of evolution, through all the machinations of the mind, through all that turmoil, through all those miseries. But the purpose of it all is that it teaches you something. And if you accept that even that misery and the sufferings are there for a purpose, then that leads you to greater awareness. Makes me think of Christ on the Mount of Olives, what he said to God. If you accept even the misery and the sufferings that are there for a purpose, he said, God, he said, Lord, if this can pass me by, please take it out, but thy will be done. That leads you to greater awareness. It opens up, it's like a flower bud. And although the bud is beautiful, as it opens up and opens up and opens into its full bloom, then you really get the beauty of the flower. And that beauty, the total opening of the flower, is full awareness. It's full love. It's total God. And that exquisite final paragraph the Gururaj described, that's the culmination of this individual journey. But Tatsavamini, I am Brahman. I become Brahman. And there's no difference between the individual self and the universal self. That's unity consciousness. And Gururaj, he's so far beyond mindfulness or that kind of thing. I mean, this is the whole journey that he's describing, the whole spiritual journey. So I've gone over by about 3 minutes, and most of you have clicked out, so I'm just seeing my... Hi. Did it click back in, I think?
We lost you for a second.
Yep, we did. Well, actually, it was appropriate. We went into unity consciousness.